coming to welcome everyone who's here in person and watching the Zoom live version of this, and those that are watching the recording afterwards. This is our December Manufacturers Council meeting, and we'll be doing this obviously again in January. This is the last of one of our last council meetings of the year, and very happy to have it be capped off with some old favorites of ours that have come and presented a couple of times to other councils in the past. I think maybe the Manufacturers Council once, maybe.
Yes.
Last year,
Yes.
or maybe a couple of years
Yeah,
before
I
that.
think it was a couple of years ago.
Mac,
COVID, it could have been 3 years ago.
yeah, Mac McVey with ClearView Management Resources.
Got it.
And got there. And he'll be talking to us about the smart talent management systems that they have utilized with other companies. And that's something you might want to incorporate into your own, or just the importance of having systems in place at your workplace. I don't think there's any real major announcements from us. We'll be continuing to share our COVID Manufacturers Council updates. The Ohio Manufacturers Association has been so helpful for us throughout this and making sure you guys are up to speed on everything going on, including the OSHA's guidelines and everything going on with that. But we'll continue to do that heading into the new year. And with that, I think I'll hand it over to Matt to take us to the presentation.
Yes, we're talking about smart talent management systems, and we'll have to give a couple of definitions here because everybody uses terms differently. And as part of that, we'll also visit some things like another term. How many of you ever heard of employee engagement? But I'm going to bet what Lou thinks is employee engagement is going to be different from what Josh thinks, what John thinks, and around the room, right? And that in itself is an issue, right? Is when we use terms, what do we mean? And other people get things in their head, and that's not even what you're talking about. So we're also going to talk about career mapping. So talent management. Oh, before I go any further, one of the things that you may want to do at home or wherever you are, I gave everybody a sheet of paper. It's real elaborate. Okay, it has on the top, what talent data should we track? Okay, what talent analytics should we perform? What talent graphics would I like to see? Okay, Frank and I did a study a few years ago for Ohio State University about manufacturing's need for skilled and highly skilled talents. One of the interesting things that we found as we went from place to place to place, including education places, including manufacturers, right, is that nobody actually knew what talent they had within their workplace. Nobody knew when somebody left the room, the classroom, right, what talent that people actually walked away with. All right. How many of you go to an education program and you meet somebody in the program, you start talking to them, and the next thing you know is you're walking away with some talent you didn't expect to walk away with. All right. And when you get back to your place of work, your employer has no idea what all it was that you actually learned, right? Because, you know, I don't know about you, but you ever find somebody, you're in a classroom and you look over and somebody else is sitting there, right? What are they actually picking up? What are they actually able to do differently when they leave? Okay. What should they walk away with? What did they actually pick up? Do we know? When you hire somebody, for instance, you hire them to perform job X, to be a welder. And along the way, you're going to make sure that they have certain welding skills. But what if you find out later that they also did another job before that? And it sure would have been nice to have known that, okay, at this point in time. How many of you have ever been in an organization where you end up hiring some consultant, okay, and they come in, is that me or you? They come in And they see a consultant come in, and about 3 months later, they're talking to somebody in their organization, and that person says, wonder why they brought that consultant in. I've done that before. I know exactly what they're doing. How much are we paying that guy? Right? And you find out that somebody in your organization has that talent and has had it all along. My background is kind of strange. I spent 10 years in the Navy nuclear operations program. And as a part of that, I trained reactor operators, engine room operators for nuclear submarines. A lot of people don't know I was also a machinist mate. Okay, that did those things, a nuke machinist mate. So I can do plumbing, right? Which I had to do in my house the other day, but that's another story. All right, so they don't know that. Then I went to an organization that was a training organization, and I got picked up to be nuclear operations in the nuclear operations training department, the budget and administrative coordinator. Then I moved into HR. So somebody hiring me down the road hires me because of my HR talent management experience, talents. They may not have a clue that I also have financial talents, that I also have training talents, that I also have nuclear engineering technology talents, right? How many people do you have in your workplace that you have no clue as to all the talents that they actually have, right? We also make assumptions because I was in HR talent management that I'm great at compensation systems. Guess what? I'm not. I didn't really like that.
And don't want.
And don't want to be, okay? So we make all kinds of assumptions about people. Data tells us things, right? Data tells us facts. What should I actually rely on for that person? What kinds of things should I actually what kind of training programs should I put that person through, right? Okay, let's see, learning how to use the system. One rubbed off. That's on.
Oh, that's never fine. I think it's this. Oh, it's in the click on it. Try again.
You just found out a talent that I don't have. Okay, so we're here primarily talking about talent management systems, right? And people. Is that a big issue today? All right, how many of you recognize that we're in the middle of talent management wars? All right, the fight for talent. Where are we going to find it? How do we make the most of it? Can we do with 90 people what we thought we needed 100 people for, right? Because we're not going to find another 10, or it's going to be harder to. What do we have to attract people? Okay, so just do this real quick. The Great Resignation is part of what started this whole thing. There were actually problems finding people before the Great Resignation. When we did that study for Iowa State University, 1914 would have been a few years ago. In 2014, 2015, right, they were already talking about how in the manufacturing world that they were short about 600,000 people. Okay, that's one of the reasons why we did the study. So then we've gone through the COVID and other things. So a few quick things, okay, industries. And here's another issue. How many of you, okay, remember all the stuff about fake news? All right, we're still talking about it. What do we rely on? What data do we rely on? What things do people say that isn't backed with data? So do we listen to it? What is speculation versus data? Okay, so I got my data from the Department of Labor. All right, you could find different numbers. I'll guarantee you, if you went to look at what ABC News versus Fox News versus somebody else put out there, right, it's all going to look a little bit different. So I thought you ought to know where I got it from. Some of the numbers were interesting. In the highest month of people walking away from the job, Great Resignation, 4 million people walked away in April. July, 4 million. end of July, there was 10.9 that had walked away from their jobs. All right. Okay. Interestingly, though, manufacturing had the smallest, okay, it was actually a decrease from norm, the number of people walking away from the jobs. The people that had the highest levels were high tech and healthcare. Healthcare, think about what they went through, right? COVID. I mean, they were like stressed to the max, hours to the max. The number of healthcare workers that actually died because they were working in that environment. High tech had a large number. Why is that? Because of all the changes that happened in the workplaces, right? Where all of a sudden we had a bunch of people working from home, doing work for banks. Do we need some security on your system that we didn't have before? Yes, so let's hire somebody from high tech to come in and do that. All of a sudden, more people are going to websites looking for different things. Anybody know what happened to the retail industry, right? You had storefronts and now you have websites. Okay, who did that? High tech. The other thing that was, so you had a large number of hours. We create software and we went to look to get some people to help to improve our system. The number of different places that we thought, oh, well, we can go here. Guess what? They're booked. Oh, we go here. They're booked. I mean, the hours were crazy. So you had two things. Number one, like the healthcare, the high-tech industry, number of hours were going up and people were getting tired of all the work. The other thing was there's more opportunities. So you got more entrepreneurship, right? Opportunities. So you had people going and creating their own high-tech. So anyway, they were quitting this job to go start this business. Ages, here's something, a lot of people think that it was these young kids that were leaving work, right? I need somebody, how many of you have ever heard this? I need somebody who has some work ethic, right? They'll just come and do their job, right? And so the kids, no, it wasn't the kids. Okay, the people who were leaving was 30 to 45. Those that were all of a sudden, with all the other things that were happening, questioning, what is it I'm doing with my life? What is it I'm doing with my life? Is there a good work-life balance? I'm working all these hours, maybe I should look at this. And like you had things happening where all of a sudden, if I could work from home, I mean, I've got grandchildren. I don't have children, so I can't imagine. I've heard numbers that people are paying like $10,000 to $12,000 a year for childcare, depending upon the age of your children. All of a sudden, you're working from home. Guess what? I don't have that cost. I don't have the additional transportation costs. Or maybe I don't need this job, right? And rethinking that. All right, so we had, let's see, other things. There's been, how many of you have heard of all the different alliances, collaborations, industry sector partnerships that have been created, right? And all of a sudden you got a bunch of people that are doing things that they didn't used to in the talent world, all right? Things that maybe everybody needs to, because all of a sudden you're gonna find yourself, you might've been a great employer, but everybody else is doing all these things. And next thing you know is you're one of the bottom employers, okay? Constantly, this high-tech world is changing all of this, you know, the scenarios, the situations, the relationships that you have, okay? So a lot of things happening in the talent world.
Do you think, I'm sorry, I should have interrupted.
That's
but
okay.
those groups that left their jobs in July, where's the number on the backside where they migrated to?
No, they're looking. They've done things like there's a large number that have gone back to school. Okay, what is it I'd really like? What companies are doing? They've done more research about companies. All of a sudden, companies' causes are an important thing. I want to work for somebody who gives back to the community and does these different things. I want to work for a company that has these kinds of values. I want to work for a company where I have some control over my career, right? I don't have to wait you know, for 20 years till I get a promotion in the company. I want to have a scenario where they align with me better with what's going on in the company. I'm going to pay more attention to the financials of the company, to the new technology of the
But
company.
with healthcare, I'm wondering.
Yeah.
If because of the new things that are coming out, OSHA's saying we're not involved, or that this judge is witness day or whatever. I look for healthcare companies to come back up. Possibly.
Okay, I think that there's going to be a number of numbers that are going to come back up. I think people are exploring and finding out what's happening. Some of them have gone back to school, so they're going to go back to healthcare, but they want to go back to healthcare with these credentials that would allow them to move faster to get these kinds of jobs in healthcare. What is healthcare actually doing? What have they done with their leadership? They're right. Some of their practices. Is it going to be an open and fair? Are they going to look more at the data, which is what we're talking about today, than I really like you? You know, it's like, I really like Gary. I can't stand Josh. I mean, if you get to know Josh, you understand what I'm talking about, right? And so Gary is brilliant. Josh is a loser. You know, and we just made that decision because of whether I like them or not.
Just like right now.
Yeah, how many of you have seen that in the workplace where this person likes this person a lot and assumes that everything that needs to be done can be done by this person, right? They have no data to support that. They just like that. The person sucks up to them better. Excuse me if that's not a good thing. Oops. Oops, yeah, I'm sorry, everybody. I'm waving my hands around and I got the controller in my hand. Oh. Okay. Yeah, I need the data on how to control that. Okay. So did I answer any of your
Yeah,
questions?
no, that's great.
Okay. All right. So I don't have the answer to everything today. We only have so much time. So, okay. So what is talent management? If we're looking for data relative to talent management, okay, this is a big picture map of talent management. And there should be, okay. Can I pause it? Pardon? Yeah, it's skipping over on this screen. There should be phases. Okay, bottom line is if you look at this screen, okay, the ones that are in big black lettering, those are the primary. This is the entire holistic integrated picture of talent management. Yeah, you can see people's eyes glaze over. Really? This is talent management? But if you look at this, right, the primary ones are succession management, talent acquisition, onboarding, talent development, job tools, job leadership, workforce planning, performance management, retention strategies, and tactics. Those are the primary, the big picture categories of talent management. And then off to the left, you also have what's the talent architecture, you know, what's the data you're going to track and how do you organize that data is talent architecture. Then you got job descriptions, excuse me, which feed a lot of that talent architecture, and compensation benefits. All right. All of those are the primary elements of talent management. Make sense? Okay. Okay. So, what data do you have relative to succession management? Where are people? When the Great Resignation stuff came out, the first thing I was asking, what is all the data? Like what ages are leaving? What jobs are they leaving from? How many of you have data that's tracked about where the people are quitting in your place of work and why they're quitting, right? Under which manager? Is it a manager's trend? You know, and you start to look at it and you find out that that manager's got very bad leadership practices. Okay, Or is it the job? Right? Nurses, you'd expect that. Okay, so, or is it a job where you expect or you need high levels of talent? And so the competition for that person is higher than the competition for the top people that are performing jobs that are not as high, right? The technology. Okay, how about this? This may sound funny. You have fewer people in line at your place of work for jobs because you don't have high-tech tools in your place of work. How many of you wondered when all of a sudden, like education and employers are getting together, and the next thing you know is you have Ramtech come up. And Ramtech's a big thing, right? Robotics. How many of you realize that manufacturing hasn't moved as quickly into robotics as everybody projected? Okay, what if you got kids that are going to school to get robotics training, but then they can't find jobs with robotic tools, or at least not in your neighborhood? And you're wondering, why aren't they coming to work for me? Because you don't have the tools that they really want to work with, right? They're really looking forward to playing with some high-tech tools. Does that make sense? Okay, so performance management. How many of you take work samples at work? How many of you do performance evaluations? But how many of you do performance evaluations with real data, where you go out and you track? You can track, sometimes it's easier to track what their actual outcomes are, what they actually achieve, how many patients they work on, how many of these products they produced, right? But are you tracking that per person, per group? Are you tracking the amount of waste per person? Are you tracking the number of talents that they have? Are you tracking? There's a tool that I provide, for instance. This is a performance management tool, right? This is a data acquisition tool. It's, if you're a manager, and I've got you four that work for me, because I don't want Josh. You guys remember that, okay? So anyway, he's driving me home, maybe. Okay, so I say, I need to go out and every once in a while capture some data about the talents that you're using. You're getting good results, and I can see that. But why are you getting the good results? What are you doing differently than Lou, right? I don't know. So I go out and I got this tool, and I go out and I observe. All you got to do is schedule this 10 minutes, 15 minutes, once a week, right? Go out and capture data about your workers. Okay? So I go out and I watch what he's doing. Oh, then I ask him a few questions. Right? Well, why did you do it that way? You know, why didn't you do it this way? Everybody else is doing it this way. And that's when I find out. Well, I learned a few months ago that when I do it this way, here's how people respond. Here's what happens with the tool, right? And I get data. Okay? I get data about his performance. I get data about that job. Okay? It's interesting. People don't want to go out and spend the time to observe what's happening with their workers. Okay? Now I got data. I also see he wasn't doing so well. And I go and watch him. What's he not doing? Or what is he doing that he shouldn't be doing? Right? And I get data again. And I take this, I back, and I tear that off and throw it into his file. I now got another piece of data, right? And how many of you think that it's easier to confront somebody about a problem if I actually have data? Right? It's harder to argue data. I watched you 7 times, 6 of them, you did this. And here's what was happening, right? You're great at every other part of your job. It's this job. It's this part. And here's what I observed. Can you tell me why? It makes it easier to have a discussion with them, right? If I have data. Okay. Retention strategies and tactics. You implement a new plan. What happened to the retention, right? You implemented a new tool, a new system, right? A new recognition program, on and on. Okay, what happens? I've only got so much time, so. Okay, we've got something we call data-driven leadership, right? Looking at talent data on the left, data processes. Data processes are like, did you perform analytics? Did you graph it? Action uses. Okay. Here's some of the different categories of talent data, and they came from mostly that talent management system, right? But if you look at it, what's the knowledge, skills, competencies that they have? What are the talents that they actually have? All of them, right? You want all of them, because if you find out that this machinist mate, this mechanic, right, also has research skills, what do you think when I'm setting up a team that I not only look like a project team? We do things like this. I need a manager on the team. I need somebody from each of these departments, right? Because all those departments are impacted by it. But then do I look for other talents? Shouldn't we have somebody that can write? Shouldn't we have somebody that can do research? Shouldn't we have somebody that can do project management? Shouldn't we have somebody that knows about analytics and data, right? If you see that happening when they put together teams, project teams. I don't see it happening.
Well, sometimes in my former life, I saw it was always the managers on those teams, not the person that really knows and does the job.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's just my perception.
Yeah, I agree. Not engaging the talents that.
Not the people that really know. Because, when you work for a multi-gazillion dollar company, it's all about being noticed so you can be
Yes.
promoted, or sometimes you get promoted because but and we know that happens too, right? But if you're on these teams,
Yeah.
nobody really recognizes.
Failing out.
There you go. And moving up, right?
Yeah.
Organizations should track all the different work experiences that you have, including work on teams, right? Think about this. What if you have a certification, a credential that's a team leader certification, right? And then we got an opening for somebody in management. Who better to put in there than somebody that actually has some leadership experience, team leadership? Unfortunately, frequently what we do is we put people in there that's already in a leadership role. What if we put somebody in there and the team leader is somebody who is a manager? We put in as a team leader somebody who wants that experience. They then have the manager be their mentor, and they then get the experience and the certification or credentials to be a team leader. Okay? You get data of what that person actually does. You do a debriefing with the manager, you do a debriefing with the rest of the people on the team to ask what that person did. You go in and observe a few things. The world is changing. How many of you see the fact that the world is changing to more data systems? Okay, manufacturing has this thing called Industry 4.0, right? Industry 4.0 is about data, about smart manufacturing. It also includes integrated systems, all right? If you go back here, and you look and want to talk about integration, that's an integrated system. Everybody here understand that? You can't do a good job at acquiring the talent and then do a bad job of onboarding and get away with it. Frequently, what will happen is you'll lose these people. So you did a really good job of here getting in the right people, but now you've upset the right people and lost them, or you didn't engage them enough and you lost them. All right. And so now you have what you do, you've added negative reputation. You have to do all of these things well in order to really be in the war of talent management. Okay? Because you can do any one of those other things poorly and lose people, get a bad reputation. Make sense? Okay, so you've heard about micro-credentialing, micro-certifications. That's what you get into. You'll see some on that. What their learning capabilities are. Learning capabilities and agility, flexibility are two talents that I think you're going to see a lot more people looking for. And so how do I identify whether or not people have those? And the reason why I say those are things that people are going to be looking for is with technology changing as rapidly as it is, you know, you sit down today, you get trained to do the job. It takes you 6 months. 6 months from now, the tools that you were trained on 6 months ago have changed, right? Their PLC systems have changed. Their fact that now it's integrated with this tool and this tool. And 6 months ago, it was independent. So succession management. Okay, let's see. Some of the data processes, metrics. We're using data measures. How do we measure the performance of these things? How do we measure the performance of people? How do we measure the performance of tools? Criteria. How many of you have ever heard of subject matter experts, SMEs? All right. Here's what I see happening, though. It's the same thing. Okay. Getting control of this. It's going to keep going. Shoot, what did I just say? Oh, yeah, and have criteria for who becomes a subject matter expert, right? They don't have any performance samples. They don't have any learning samples. Did they take this course? How did they perform in this course? Did anybody debrief them afterwards? Did anybody ask to observe them performing something they just learned on the job? Talent verification.
Or how about it's a senior employee that is upset because they didn't get the supervisor manager job. And then to satisfy them, they go, well, we're going to make you a SME. Right?
Yes, yes, she's got it. And we do that all the time. And so then they make that person a SME because they got upset about the fact that we didn't use data over here, right? So somebody else is watching this and they see the fact that I just gave this person a SME position and I didn't have any criteria on them. So then they go and they cry and they, right? Data. Okay, it's like, you know, the spiraling effect. Managers need to be able to learn how to capture data, how to use data, coming up with different tools for how you capture data, how you gather data, right? Becomes something that you have to do even more and more because data is what allows you to set up criteria and measure if people have the criteria. And you need criteria in order to show that it's fair, right? Equitable. You're hearing this a lot. Fair and equitable workplaces. Okay. Data. Succession trending. This is a chart. We've got a software system, a talent management software system. And in there, it will track the data you enter for what we want to have for a number of jobs in that position. It will track the jobs that quit. It will track the jobs and who they're working for. It will track, right? Charts, pictures, people like pictures, don't they? And if you can have pictures that are based on data, it makes a world of difference. Okay. Job descriptions. Can I get it to stop? This is data from job descriptions. Okay. But most organizations don't capture enough data from job descriptions, right? What is all the data it has? This has what's the responsibility area? What are the outcomes that I should see from this responsibility? When they perform this job, what outcomes should they see? And what should be the level of those outcomes? Well, so, no. Okay. So information you capture, some people think of data as just being numbers. Data isn't just numbers, right? In this case, data is information about what are the policies, what are the laws, what are the different things that impact this job. You're in healthcare. Any laws that impact the work that your workers do? Okay. You don't see that as much in manufacturing, except for we do have OSHA, right? And all jobs have civil rights laws, right? But in some manufacturers, you have, because of the level, like chemicals, right? Where you have certain laws that impact the job. Does that help? Yes. Do they have the knowledge? Yes. Okay. The other thing is to understand that from job descriptions, right, you have information about requirements for the job that impacts your hiring system, that impacts the training that we develop, that impacts talent identification and verification, employee alignment, and on and on. Okay, in a system, you can do things like, why is it that he's learning a lot more things, right? Gaining more talents than he is? What's different? Is it his manager? Does he have a mentor? Does he just like learning? Does he, right? How many of you agree with what I said, that we need people, that the way technology and things are changing, that we're going to need people that have learning capabilities, okay, ongoing. If I can track talents you gain from the talents you gain from the talents you gain, I start to learn things about that person. It may not be that they have more learning capabilities, right? If I can see that data though, then that gives me information I can then go talk to you about. Why is it you're getting all these courses? What is it that's interesting? And then I find out, oh, I didn't pay any attention to what all the courses were. He's trying to get to this job over here by attending these courses. Okay, so it's a promotional thing. Or he tells me, I just like to learn. Right? I told you I was a Navy nuke. Some people like to get certifications. All right. In the nuclear power arena, we had all kinds. We had, machinery 2 lower level certification. We had a reactor operator certification. We had a chemist certification, diesel generator certification. And nuke? Oh yeah, we did have that because if we lost power, we needed something to get you up and going so that you could shut down the reactor plant, right? Okay, I was a diesel generator operator. Do you know how many of you are like this? You like to achieve. You like to be a master. We had nukes that were getting all these certifications just so they could say, I know that. I know more than you do. I'm not kidding, okay? There were people that were like merit badges. How many of you remember Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, right? And there were some people that just like to get merit badges, okay? Okay, so you get that data. Why I was going up here is intelligence, like a report menu. It's got like people profiles, recent demographic activity, recent talent activity. And so it can actually track. And that's something you could do. You could do that with an Excel spreadsheet. You don't need the software, right? Bought the software, I'd like it, but you don't need it. You could do Excel spreadsheets. Okay, it's data. Am I saying data enough? That's what makes things, that's when smart talent management, the more data you have, the smarter you're going, right? We call this talent system, we call it intelligence, because it's talent intelligence. The more you know about the person, the better you teach them, right? Because you know more things, you know what they can do, you know what they need help on. You can set up criteria like somebody's alluded to. If I'm looking for my next supervisor, right, and I need to do some succession management for it, I can look to see who meets certain criteria because they have these talents. If they have these talents, then we'll start to put them through training. We have criteria for who gets to go to training, for who get, right? That way it's a fair, there's a systems approach to it. Systems approaches align people with what it is they need to do. It does give them more control over their future with you. So management gets the data, the people get the data. Okay, and I have no idea what time, so is it? Oh, I got 20. Oh, heck, I can slow down. Okay, so leadership. Here's some things about leadership and engaging people, managing people. Okay.
5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
How many want to leave now? Don't raise your hands. I don't want to know. Okay. So what we have here, and you've probably seen a million things. So here's another one for your data bank. Okay. I mean, actually, I've got a few different models about what leadership is. Where I see it going, you know, one of the big four for me are trust. The leader should build trust within the organization. Having a system, having criteria, having data that they use to make decisions. How many of you would feel better about your leader if you knew that there was some logic, there was some system that they used, and you could count on it? They did it with continuity, right? Down there, right below trust. Okay, they weren't whimsical, they weren't flip-flop, they weren't, right? You knew what the system was for how you got promoted in there, for how you got more opportunities. Okay, so trust, you can count on that. Trust, there's the continuity of how they do. There's trust, how many of you agree that, hey, I want a leader that makes it happen in that organization, and I know that I can count on that organization being there and growing. Okay, do I have data about that? So do they have corporate vision? Do they have corporate performance? How many of you also realize that there are people that are called leaders that are not necessarily people leaders? Okay, that may sound funny because I thought they were called leaders because they lead people. How many of you remember kids when they were the number one in their math class called they're a leader? Okay, they were number one on the football team. That person's a leader. They were a leader in their performance in football. They were a leader in their performance of subject matter. They think that because you see this person and they're performing great and they're getting all the attention that you're going to want to follow them. But how many of you have seen people that are performance leaders that the last thing you'd ever want to do is work for them? Okay, because they were a bully, they were nasty, they were, you know, okay, they didn't talk to you. Okay, so leadership, growth. They work on your growth, right? Enabling you to grow. We're talking about your leader. So they help you to grow. They find out, what is it that you want to do here? Why are you here? What is it you want to do here? How can I help you get there? Can we build a roadmap for the talents you need to get, what you get first, the opportunities you need to have, like being on projects, things like that, right? So again, you're capturing data from that person as to what it is they want to do and what it's going to take to get them there. And if you know where they are relative to the talents they have, you have that data, and you know the talents that are needed to get to this place that they want to go, and you know the courses, you know the on and on, right? You have the data that says, here's what they need to have experience in. Then you can actually build a good roadmap for their growth. And you can actually help to enable that, right? Make it happen for them. But you need to do this for everybody, right? That works for you. Okay. Engagement. I'm going to skip, come back to that. Here's things that, here's 8 tenets of employee engagement. We've got achievement. How many of you know that people that like to achieve things? Okay, they like to be the one that produces the most. They like to be the one that gets the most micro certifications. They like to be the one that gets the most attaboys from the customers. They like to achieve. Give them opportunities to achieve, and you recognize their achievement, right? So again, data. Oh, shoot, sorry. I'm looking at something thinking if I click it, then it's going to go there. Let me put that down. Alignment. This is huge. You saw alignment on the last thing, right? How many of you realize that people need to be aligned all the time? Alignment is one of those things that engage. Why are we doing this? Why do we do that? Why are we changing this? Why don't we do this? Right? How did you choose them? Why did they get picked? Okay, you need to align them. Some managers don't like that. I told you before. No, you think you told me. Here's the words you actually used. Do you know what those words could actually mean? Right? And so you need to sometimes align some people because they were raised differently. They're not just trying to be a pain in the butt, okay? They just hear things differently than what you're used to hearing, right? And you think these words mean this, but they can also mean these things. Like, how many of you think that you all agree as to what the term respect means, right? I like to be treated with respect. What's that mean? And Gary says, well, I said, please. I said, thank you. I said, excuse. I held the door open for you. What more do you want? Right? I want you to listen to me and use the talents that I have fully. And when I come up with an idea, I want you to give it some credence, right? I want to process it. I want to sometimes use it. Okay, authority and influence. Yeah, I don't have. Okay, we'll talk more about that, but how many of you think that it's one of the things you could do with people is to give them a little authority every now and then? You know, put them into a team leadership role and give them a little bit of authority. So spent all that time in nuclear operations. How many of you heard of 3 Mile Island, right? The original TMI. TMI means something different today, right? Too much information. 3 Mile Island. How many of you realize that 2 of the operators, there were 3 operators originally in the room when the incident happened. 2 of them were ex-Navy nukes, nuke trained, operated, right? And 1 of them was an engineer. The 2 Navy nukes told them, the engineer, here's what you need to do. He didn't listen. He was the engineer. He made a different decision. Accident happened. How do I know this? Because I know the guy, Richard McPherson, who went in, was one of those who analyzed the accident after it happened. Okay? The 2 people on the lower level actually knew what to do more than the person on the higher level. Give people more authority. Okay? Realize if you have the data and you know the criteria that they're meeting, right, then you have data to make better data decisions, which means you listen to somebody else. Okay, fellowship. People like to work because they get to talk to other people. This is where I wondered if this work from home was going to keep working. I figured the work from home was going to last for like maybe a year or two, and then people would be like, I want to get back to work. So the social, the fellowship environment, I guess if you're saving $12,000 a year on childcare, well, maybe I don't need to talk to as many people. Mastery, respect, reward, self-determination, those are things. Here's something. How many of you have heard all this stuff about good jobs? There's the Good Job Institute. There's even a grant that's out right now, the Good Job Challenge grant, $500 million. You get anywhere from 5 to 25 million. So part of it is to develop people to go to work. Well, what if you don't really have good job, right? What if people aren't interested in the work that you're offering? We do all the training, but nobody shows. Understand what I'm saying there? So do you have workplaces where there are actually good jobs that others will think of them as good jobs? You can see, well, they'll get this, right? They'll get this, okay? So you can see the difference down on the right, right? You just got competitive pay versus incentive pay, right? And people, how many of you have seen some organizations where there's all kinds of different add-ons to the basic pay? But the first thing you got to start with is your pay actually competitive? And this is also where job descriptions, good thorough job descriptions play a role, because if you don't do a good thorough job description, you might be thinking I'm paying very well. But if you did a thorough job description and you had that analyzed for what they should be paid, you might find that it should be more. Because what you're actually doing and calling the same job as the employer next to you, right? They're two different things. You're actually requiring more talents, requiring more work from them, calling it the same job, thinking that you're paying competitively. Another example of data. Okay, I touched on this basically. Oh, I am going to say we did a debrief with an organization about their corporate values. And one of the things that we found was that you say these 10 things, these are our corporate values. You give that to all the managers and say, uphold these corporate values. And then you go out and watch what those corporate managers are actually doing. And you find out that this person read this corporate value differently than this person. You understand what I just said? Part of what should take place is you should actually have an examination as to when you hear that corporate values, what does that mean you should hear? What does that mean you should do? What should we see and what should we hear that says that's that corporate value? And we have some continuity across the organization. Okay, so where do your jobs fall? Good to best, below good? Who is your competition for the workforce? Okay, here's another thing. We have a system. How many of you have what you call a good problem solving system? You have a good transformation or change management system. Okay, you know what I'm talking about? Somebody brings up a problem. What's the first step you take? What's the second step you take? How many of you, I'll ask you a few questions. How many of you ever had a situation in which the definition of the problem or opportunity seemed to move over time? You had a meeting here, and here's what we were talking about. A month later, you had another meeting, and all of a sudden we're talking about this. We added this thing to it. We go over here, right? Okay, how many of you have problem situations that come up over and over and over and over again? How many of you hear that about people problems? The same manager complaining about the same worker and the same thing. Okay, I would say that the problem is the manager. The manager is not doing effective problem solving. Okay, how much time has been wasted just talking about making change or ineffectively making change? Have you ever noticed that if you suddenly start asking more questions, right? Somebody brings a problem to you, you suddenly start asking more questions, all of a sudden they shut up about the problem, right? Or they suddenly come back with some more data and the problem has changed, right? I can go on and on, all right? I had a situation with a client where an employee that they liked came to them and said, sorry, Josh, you're associated with me. Okay, so they would say, Josh did this, right? Josh did this and he did this and he did this. The supervisor listened to them because the supervisor liked Lou, right? It's understandable why you like Lou more than Josh, but anyway, so they liked Lou, so everything Lou said was true. They never went in and actually heard from Josh as to, Josh, what do you know about this? They immediately said, everything Lou was saying is the truth. They didn't just ask, gather data from Lou. Who else was there? Anybody else there? Do you have any evidence, any data that this happened? Data, right? And then say, okay, I'll be back. Thank you for the information. And then go talk to Josh and ask Josh, Josh, do you know anything about this situation? What can you tell me? What data do you have? Anybody else involved in it? Did it impact anything else? You see what I'm doing? I'm capturing data. I'm doing a defining, initial define. Then I come back and I say, okay, we need to do a full discovery. And I put this process, I use both Josh and Lou to say, who else should we get involved in this? Anybody else or just the two of you? What else do we need to discover? What other things can we look at, right? So you do more of a discovery, then we end up redefining, because I'll guarantee you, you'll find that what it is that Lou, but what she brought to me initially is not the whole truth and nothing but the truth, all right? So, okay, I got 1 minute. Here is something I'll go through real quick. Having expansive career paths is another thing to more fully engage people, more fully align them with staying, why they should stay with you, all right? You've got the primary job that they're in now, and how many of you can see that you can go from that at this level to another job at this level to another job? That's a career path, right? Or sometimes you can move over, and you've got some of the same talents for this lateral job path, and so you can move over here. Or obviously, at some point in time, maybe you're ready to be a supervisor. However, one of the things that can sometimes happen, kind of like the person that cries about why did you pick me kind of thing, is that sometimes we place people into supervisory roles because we don't know what else to do with them, right? And so what do? We put them in a role that they don't have any talent for, people talent, right? So now what do? Now they irritate all the people that are working for them, okay? But here's another thing that you can do: set up special criteria micro credentials, right, for other jobs like team leader, project manager, research specialist, data statistics authority, on and on. You'll be able to see this, right? And so now you got special criteria that you'll use in project teams. Some of that criteria can be used for other jobs, other career paths, okay? And so you set up those. And then there's one last thing, and then I'm done for the day. And I know you're probably done a minute ago, sorry. Is a term called subject matter experts. And you can have subject matter experts for all of those jobs, right? To where you set up like responsibility subject matter experts. Think about this: you got people that are great managers, but they're not so good at people leading. But you have others that are really good at people leading. They may not be as good at subject matter or at project or managing. You might want to figure out which ones are the subject matter experts about people leading, get some data, criteria, and then they become the mentor to the manager who's not so good at being a people leader. And vice versa, the person that's a people leader gets somebody who's really good at managing to be a mentor for them. You can even set up pay systems that are based on that, right? It gives a person it expands what you would call your career paths, right? People need to see movement, and they're expecting more of that today. If you're going to compete for the talent, that's what takes a job from being a better job to a best job. Okay, I could go on. I apologize for taking a couple minutes over. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you have any questions, you've got our contact info. It's at the end of this, so when you get this, it's on there. I've got a business card if you want it. You also got these flyers. So, if you have any questions, I promise I don't start charging tonight. So just answer your questions. Anything now or go back to work and have a good time?
Good. Just a question to the audience, whether it's on the computer or how many of you ever looked at the holistic talent management, like what he had shown up on the one slide? Did you ever look at all the components it takes in order to track, how people are doing and that kind of thing?
I think Ohio Health does a lot of that. It's hard to track though on such a large scale, especially because I'm one of the ones that's being tracked. I'm not a leader within the healthcare organization, as much as I would like to be. There are people like Dr. Gingrich and those in senior leadership positions that are making those decisions, especially on the HR side, right? But it feels like a lot of those things are happening. I'm putting myself into this right now. Okay, well, we talk a lot about job tools on our job currently. I'm doing in my current role. We do performance management. I actually have my review this afternoon with my manager to go through all the data points from this last year, right? So I feel like a lot of these things are happening within the organization. And then that last slide, when you talk about career banding, Ohio Health introduced that to us 3 or 4 years ago, where now you can actually start to see where within the organization you have movement, right? I don't have to stay at this career band on this career path. I can make lateral moves to different areas of the organization based on where I'm currently at. So I feel like they're doing that to some extent now, for sure.
You have a visual like similar to what he has?
Yeah, I can actually log into our intranet, our HR intranet, and I can see my career path. And it'll actually list jobs that are available within the organization that align with my career bands and a step up and or a step back, depending on, some people are getting towards the end of their career on our team and they're looking to scale back a little bit. They don't want to have the full load of what we're currently doing. So it's kind of interesting that we have that now to be able to look at, 30,000 people work for Ohio Health. They can work anywhere in the organization.
Now to step back, say a 30-hour week or 20-hour week.
Yep. Yeah, you could scale back hours. You could scale back to a different role within our team. You could scale back to a different role within the division. So there's a lot of different kind of moves. Now, of course, too, like Ohio Health has, I don't even know how many thousands of clinical jobs that are out there, right? This is purely on kind of the corporate side of Ohio Health and all the different areas.
Ohio Health is a good sized organization. You have software that I talked to them about 10 years ago when we were developing our software and found out all that they were doing. Excuse me. One of the things that I always wonder about on these is that how many organizations have actually clearly stated what role management and leadership has relative to these things versus what role does our talent management play relative to these things? Because one of the things you sometimes run into is there's a little bit of a, let's just say, disagreement as to whose responsibility people management is. HR, you just go out and get the data, do all the cleanup, that kind of stuff, and management leadership runs the show, and it varies from organization to organization. I'm just curious as to how many of your organizations where they clearly delineate those responsibilities, those roles. So anyway, you were starting to say something.
Yeah, I guess I think I might have lost it, but anyhow, I was just, what I was thinking, I think, was, you know, the people that are retiring early, I think they're gonna want to come back and do something, but not full time. And some of our senior centers and some of the counties that I serve, they're doing job fairs at the senior centers for 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week, and they're having great success.
Yeah, the baby boomers that just don't want to go.
Now, they still feel they have some contributions.
The gig economy is what they're calling that.
The
Oh,
way,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, the gig economy. So they're basically come back at some point, and they're gonna pay them for their services. So not necessarily full-time, but I've got a gig, I'm getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so whether it's volunteerism or whether it's whatever, they need to have that purpose to continue. And that's why I continue working. So
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that baby boomers are one of the biggest generations for entrepreneurs now. You know, that's why housing is hard to find, right, in those communities, because the baby boomers won't retire and go to Florida. They're still living in Upper Sandusky. They're still living in Union County, and so their houses aren't available.
Well, thank you again, Matt.
Thank you.
Josh, sorry for having so many examples of the negative things, but you guys are great partners.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I apologize.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Zoomers and those watching the recording. We'll see you all in January. Thank you.